because we've all heard the hiding from the bishopric joke now, and it's dead. I officially declare it dead. Done. I don't want to hear it.
You are listening to Saints in the South.
All right, welcome everyone. This is season 2, episode 71. We are Saints in the South, representing saints everywhere, and we are your source for gospel growth and good times. And as always, whether you are watching on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcast platform, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And please be sure to leave us a review and a rating. You can also check out our website, saintsinthesouth.com, and leave us a review and a rating as well. We greatly appreciate it. This week, we are in sections 51 to 57, and the title is A Faithful, a Just, and a Wise Steward. Uncle Andrew, what you got for us this week?
So here we are in the summer of 1831. We are seeing Bishop Partridge faced with all these immigrant saints from New York going to Ohio. So he is asking Joseph, the prophet Joseph Smith, what do I do with all these people, 200 people coming? So section 51 is a great bishop section. And during all this time also, the Morley Farm, we see the 4th General Conference where we see the first high priest. A lot of great things are happening. Also, we are introduced to a lot of new people, some unsung heroes like Sidney Gilbert. We always hear Sidney Rigdon, and I've never really heard much of Sidney Gilbert, but he was one of the unsung, less known history folks that went to Missouri. And this is where we'll actually talk about Heidi's home state. Is Missouri a southern state or what? What's that considered?
Well, if you
Central
go
Western?
back in time, they were on the side of the Confederacy. If you go into Quantrill's Raiders and Bleeding Kansas, all of that, technically, if you go to that level of Civil War history, yes. However, we are very proudly Midwestern.
Midwestern.
So we'll fight
Okay.
over that.
So we get to hear about Missouri, and we actually get to find out where Zion's at. So again, we'll and also hear the old famous songwriter W.W. Phelps wrote a lot of the church hymns we sing today, From the Spirit of God and many more. And him and Oliver and Sidney Gilbert and some other person we'll learn in this section, they actually go to Zion, Independence, and kind of plant the city to kind of get things ready. So that's where we're at right now. Summer of 1831.
I like it.
So I guess just to me, I wanted to get I know I wasn't here the week that y'all were talking about the law of consecration.
Right.
That was one of the weeks. But have you seen the video, the little video in the lesson?
Where the Harper,
Stephen Harper.
That is
Stephen
a
C.
great
Harper.
video
Yeah.
to explain what the law of consecration is. Not only what it is, but what it is today, right? And it's like, I just highlighted some notes that I loved what he said. He said, tithing didn't replace the law of consecration. It's part of it. I was like, because I've always heard that tithing sort of replaced the law of consecration because the saints couldn't live the law of consecration. So it wasn't. Anyway.
Yeah, that's false doctrine.
That's false doctrine. Another thing he said God has never and will never force us to live the law of consecration. He'll never do it. And I thought, okay, well, of course, force. He doesn't force anybody to do anything. That's Satan's tactics. But it's like, I just always thought like, well, everybody's going to have to one day. That's in my mind. That's the way I play it. Like everybody's going to have to live the law of consecration. So we better learn how to deal with it. That type of thing. But it's really not that. It's like with anything, any of God's laws, he wants us to want to do it, right? We got to get ourselves and change ourselves, convert ourselves to a point to where that's what we want to do. We want to live the law of consecration. That's where he wants us to be. And the other thing is, people ask, when will it start again? The millennium, whatever. He says it's never stopped. He said it's never stopped. He said the law is there in the scriptures. It's an eternal law. He said it's up to us to live it willingly. And I thought, wow, now I'm not saying, hey, everybody give me a portion of your land and let's just go crazy. And it's not really about that right now. It's more about just freely sharing with others the
times,
abundance
talents.
that you have, right? Times, talents, whatever it is, your home. If you have to have someone, I remember during the hurricane season a couple of years ago, maybe longer, 3 years probably now. But we had a family come in from Florida, I guess. Remember the state we opened up our homes.
Yep, that's right.
To share our homes. And I'll be honest with you, I was a little bit of what was his name? I didn't forgot his name now. Copley.
Leman Copley.
Yeah, the one that kind of said,
Yeah.
"Hey, come on and bring on my land." And I remember saying, "Of course, we'll open our home to anyone. Bring it on." And of course we did. And then the first day, and I'm like, I'm just being real. It was like, do they not like clean up after themselves? And like, you just start, that type of thing. And I was like, and this is me, believe me, this is all me. This was just my, I needed help. You know what I'm saying? Nothing to do with them. And super, super great people. And but
They're listening.
That's right. Exactly. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. Oh, they're listening. I know they are. No, actually, what it turned into was a great relationship, a great friendship, and so it's like, it's easy to get in that mindset of, oh, this is too hard, or it's not comfortable.
Mhm.
It's out of the norm. It's not my routine. It messes up everything. And in reality, it's making us something better. It's building relationships. You're becoming more like Christ. I mean, really, that's really what it is. But the law of consecration, great video. If you haven't seen it, check out that video. He explains it really well, and really said some things that really made me think. I was like, wow, we should be living it now, to a degree. I mean, obviously,
yeah. And then I think we mentioned last time in the temple, you don't covenant to live the law of consecration at a later date.
exactly.
You covenant.
Yeah,
to
we're
live the law
not
of
waiting for
consecration.
the
When
day
they
that
get better at all
kicks
this
in.
church stuff.
Exactly.
That's right. So Amanda and I talked a little bit about this last night with the law of consecration. Really, we can live as much of the law of consecration as we desire.
Right.
And because it talks about in the scriptures in I believe it's section 42, and then as well again here in 51, it talks about not only your needs being met, but your wants being met as well. Right. So today we can meet our needs, we meet our wants, and then on the first Sunday of every month, we're able to give a fast offering, right?
Yeah, right.
And which here they created a bishop storehouse, which is what we're literally doing. We are giving financially to the bishop storehouse,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we could quite easily give of all of the excess financially if we desired, take care of our wants, take care of our needs. Okay, everything else going to the church.
Church,
and,
right.
and then on top of that, you've got the time that we consecrate and everything, and you can come to as close as you want to live in the law of consecration today, just by doing that.
There's actually a great little article in the Joseph Smith Papers Documents, Volume 3. It just says that the process of consecrating property was to be done according to the principle of agency, as we're talking about now. It says, as was explained in the June 1833 letter to Bishop Partridge and signed by Joseph Smith, Sidney Rigdon, Frederick G. Williams, and Martin Harris, every man must be his own judge of how much he should receive and how much he should suffer to remain in the hands of the bishop. The matter of consecration must be done by the mutual consent of both parties. For to give the bishop power to say how much every man shall have, and each man be obliged to comply with the bishop's judgment, is giving to the bishop more power than a king has. And upon the other hand, to let every man say how much he needs, and the bishop be obliged to comply with his judgment, is to throw Zion into confusion and make a slave of the bishop. The fact is, there must be a balance or equilibrium of power between the bishop and the people, and thus harmony and goodwill may be preserved among you. Therefore, those persons consecrating property to the bishop in Zion and then receiving an inheritance back must show reasonably to the bishop that he needs as much as he claims. Has to be a mutual thing. Has to be, I agree to that, you agree to that. I mean, it was not just a thing where Bishop Partridge comes up and says, Heidi, I need you to give me 16 acres for this right here. And this is what's going to, I mean, you've got to know what's going down. And then you have to go, okay, this is what I can do, or that'll be fine, or why don't we try this? And you have to work it out. It has to be an agency thing, you know, free will, you know.
And I think with the agency of that, he wants you can't show up to that without your house not in order. He wants houses in order.
Exactly.
I think that's sort of the beginning point for a lot of us. If we want to live on this higher plane, We can't. I was just talking about how messy my house is right now. I'm not living the law of consecration now because my house is a mess. But I can't account for everything in my fridge and my freezer right now because I haven't gone to the grocery store, haven't, made my meal plan for the week. I can't say what I need if I don't know. You can't just say, well, I just need some stuff. You're just continually throwing into a well if you don't have organization on both sides.
It's true.
So Bishop Partridge, during this time, was giving out, depending on your household, on everything, So, for example, a family of 3 versus a family of 10 didn't get the same stuff. I mean, it was based on your household, your needs, and just your capability on a lot of things. So,
exactly.
And that's why he was appointed the bishop. He was a worthy man.
That also says a lot about him. He knew his people. Right.
Exactly.
Or at least he had to know them really quickly. He had to get to know them really quickly, especially all these coming in. They were flooding in a way. And so he had to say, what do we do here? And he had to get out, and you have to know the people. If you find out this family's got 10 kids, maybe
and they don't like ground turkey.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I don't like ground turkey.
Have to back off of them a little bit.
So Leman Copley, he didn't agree with the law of consecration. That's what it boiled down to. He come from the Shakers, and he just couldn't get into it, I guess. So he's like, all right, there's 700 acres. Y'all gonna have to leave now, and you're gonna have to pay me some money for the damage y'all done building these houses. I think it was like $60 they had to give back to him.
Wow.
So
I'm thinking in my head now, though, it's like, man, they built some houses on the land. That's cool.
I
got some houses. Yeah, it's like, hey. Yeah.
When I think in verse 15, this is what I listened to on the way here. It said, 51:15, and thus I grant unto this people a privilege of organizing themselves according to my laws. I'm kind of not sympathizing with Leman Copley, but I get that. I get the feeling of like, my stuff. I want my stuff a certain way. When you see people messing stuff up, when Marcus has guests make a mess in his house.
He was like, and these were small kids, by the way. These were some kids that were not the adults. So some of the kids is like, we gotta. My kids are bad enough anyway.
But like, do we see this opportunity as a privilege? Because it is. But I think the natural man sees it as, that's my stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Which is why I love the word steward, because it's like, I think that's the reason the Lord continuously uses it, because nothing is ours, really. None of it is. I mean, we can lay claim to things and say, this is, but literally it's the Lord makes us stewards over things, our vehicles, our homes, our clothing, whatever it is. It's just that we're basically, the Lord's allowing us to have it, really. And how good of a steward are we? Are we not only taking care of those things, but are we willing to share those things if we need to, to help others? And so, it's on paper. Oh, that's beautiful. Absolutely. But it can be a really hard thing. I mean, as we were talking about, it can be really tough sometimes.
Which one of y'all said this was a good bishop section?
Me.
So I thought about this last night because it talked about, again, being a good steward and everybody, for those that receive, that they have a responsibility to fulfill their part of the bargain, I guess, as well. And one of the hardest things that I had experiences with was when you sit down with individuals that are needing some assistance from the quote unquote bishop storehouse and so forth. And you give them different responsibilities, or you set expectations, and then you meet with them again and they haven't done those things right. And then you exercise as much mercy as possible, and then set some more expectations, and they come back again, and then they haven't done those things that they agreed to do. And then eventually you have to draw a line and put your, I guess, foot down, so to speak, and say, can't do it anymore. If you're not willing to live up to your part, then we can't continue to assist. And those were the most difficult situations and conversations that I had to have with individuals.
And no matter how much mercy, you still feel like a bad guy.
Right, exactly.
You really do. I mean, I know, I haven't been a bishop, but I've been in a bishopric, and I know those avenues, and it's like, what do you do? It's like, what do you do? It's so frustrating because the people will not comply with what they need to do. They just want handouts, and that's tough. It is. It's very tough.
So here we are at Morley Farm, just right behind. You got old Newel K. Whitney store, just down the road from the Kirtland Temple. You got a big old farm, Morley Farm. And this is where they had their 4th conference. And this is where the first high priests are ordained. And we are, the devil comes in. They actually have a lot of spiritual experiences, feeling the spirit, but then all of a sudden the devil comes in and they recognize this Satan, this devil, and then Joseph rebukes and tells them to leave. But any thoughts on 52?
Well, one thing I'd say, we're talking about stewardships. In these sections, everyone's getting assignments. And back to what Jackson was saying, like if you're going to receive, there are things you have to do. And I think when we see these assignments that these people are given, and we can see like down the road the result of some of these assignments, whether they're fruitful, whether they're not. I think we talk a lot about stewardship and we don't, it's not ownership because the Lord gives us everything. Right. But if we don't act like it's ownership, things fall apart. If you don't take care of your car, it's going to fall apart.
Right.
And I think that's such an important distinction. If you feel empowered from the Lord to do something, you will treat it like you're the only one keeping that ship sailing. And that's the ownership that's required in a stewardship. And I think that's an interesting way as he doles out all these assignments, the people that do it right act like it's life or death. Like, no, I have to do this. This is my spiritual salvation. And the people that fail, they're an unjust steward. They're unwise.
I think we've all been there too. When you think of the car metaphor, you know how it is when you rent a car. It's not mine. I don't care. Yeah.
Let's see if this goes to 95.
Yeah, let's see what this. You know what I'm saying? So I can see that's a very good way to put it, because if you don't treat it as if it's your own, you're not going to treat it right. I mean, or you're more apt to not worry about it as much, not keep it up, not maintain it, not whatever. And so, yeah, that's a great metaphor.
Well, and it reminds me, back in the day, I used to be a merchandiser, BYU bookstore, and I had never had a managerial position before. And that's, you learn a ton supervising other people. One thing we had a really hard time with is, a bunch of students, whatever, that's fine. They're doing their best. We would have situations arise dealing with customers or suppliers or whatever we were doing and trying to figure out how to make people happy. And every time they couldn't figure out a solution, they would call me over and I would have to take care of it, which is fine. I was in charge, but it got to the point where it was counterproductive because I was dealing with every interaction with people because they didn't feel empowered to have their own interactions. So we had to do a bunch of training on, these are the things that I think, if you think this is right, I'm going to support you in that choice. If you take ownership of your position and you say, well, how do you train me properly? How do you ask me to do this? How do I know the policies? If you say, this is what we're going to do for this person, then, and even if I'm like, I wouldn't have done that there, I will say, but I wanted you. I didn't want to have to be called from my office every time you didn't know what to do. And I think that's what the Lord's saying is, if you're going to be the person who can fulfill a job, you don't second guess yourself. You don't immediately go back to management every time. I don't know, it was very enlightening for me to see the Lord gives us stewardships, and then those people have stewards under them. And there's just such a beautiful process in the church of everyone's being engaged to be a leader of some sort. He wants us to be able to do these things without constantly checking in because we know the doctrine and we know the policies.
Right. Yeah.
It's like going, Thomas and I were talking last night. What's the difference between Chick-fil-A and everybody else? It's how they're trained.
Oh, I was going to say it's got to be their work ethic.
Yeah,
they are.
It's how they're trained. And how do you feel when you go there?
Oh,
you want to be there.
Exactly.
You don't mind asking them questions. You don't mind asking for help. Then our McDonald's here is struggling.
Yeah.
Last week I have one kid who won't eat Chick-fil-A and I have one kid that won't eat McDonald's. And so I'm trying to make every person happy and it's the worst. And I felt like shouting, Mother's Day was recently.
I know.
But I had spent an hour in 2 different drive-throughs because of the labor shortage we're having here in town. And it was a mess. And I did Chick-fil-A first. And by the time I was done with McDonald's, I was like, we are never eating here again. Because even when Chick-fil-A struggles with labor shortages or whatever, you never feel inconvenience. You never feel like you're the burden. I went over to McDonald's and they were doing their best. But I was so mad. My order was wrong. And I was just like, I don't you don't want to deal with somebody who makes you feel like that. But so we need to be the Chick-fil-A of stewards.
Exactly.
Like it.
We will never be sponsored by McDonald's.
But their fries are the best.
Yeah, they do have good fries.
Yeah. So as Leman Copley and everything begins to take back his land, they get they find out they're actually going to be moving to a bunch of them are going to be heading to another part of the country, right?
That's right.
Mizzou.
So, Missouri, actually, Section 52 is the first time we hear the word Missouri. This is, 52, Heidi, right?
Yep.
Missouri.
Missouri. So
We
Land of
don't
Heidi.
say Missouri.
Missouri.
There's an I.
Well, back in the Civil War, they did.
I will fight you on that one.
but then we find out real quick that we have some enemies in Missouri too. There's a
Kansas.
cultural war going on,
Yeah.
it's some land of promise or land of Zion, but then there's some bad folks, bad people over there. Where was you at, Heidi?
I was in the premortal realm with my family.
That's right. So in 52, I'll just go. The things that stood out to me is having the apostles and the prophets go out and preach. They want them to preach pure doctrine. We talked a little bit about that in the last podcast. Don't doctor doctrine. It's our next T-shirts. I don't know. But don't go out and make up your own thing, but actually teach pure doctrine. Teach what the apostles and prophets have written. That's what it says here. And teach also what the Spirit tells you to teach. That's what they've been instructed to do. Go 2 by 2. But the other thing that I really liked was how we had mentioned that how all these, Satan is really working and he's bringing in his evil spirits, his evil influences and things like that. And so here is in 52:14, I like this. The Lord says, and again, I will give unto you a pattern in all things that ye may not be deceived. For Satan is abroad in the land, and he goeth forth deceiving the nations. It says in, I read, there was a excerpt of an article, He Truly Loves Us is the title. It's from the Ensign of May 2012. But it says, patterns are templates, guides, repeating steps, or paths one follows to stay aligned with God's will or God's purpose. If followed, they will keep us humble, awake, and able to discern the voice of the Holy Spirit from those voices that distract us and lead us away. I remember, and I could not find it, but I remember hearing that the word templates might have been a Book of Mormon Central thing, video or something. Anyway, I remember hearing the word, maybe it was the Taylor and Tyler Book of Mormon Central videos that do. Anyway, templates, you can get the word temple from templates. And, a template is a pattern. And so temples are patterns. They show us patterns. And it just, when I saw this and I was hearing this, what the Lord was saying, a pattern in all things. If we think about the temple, there's patterns in the temple that we learn. And these saints aren't very far off from receiving, when is this, Andrew?
Of June 1831.
So the temple in Kirtland
June 3rd and 5th.
When does it happen?
April 3rd, 1836.
So we're within 5 years. They're going to have these
March 26th,
really good patterns that they're going to learn,
Yeah.
and things you learn in the temple. So I thought that's pretty interesting. The Lord even says that He comes. Maybe it wasn't in this one. He comes quickly, because He will be coming quickly to the temple in Kirtland and things like that at that point. But I don't know if He's referencing that or if He's referencing the actual second coming. But anyway, I just thought it was interesting that temples are templates.
That's cool.
Fun fact: the Lord visits Kirtland more than any other place we know in the
That we know of.
Restoration.
Yeah. Okay.
That's publicly written down.
That's crazy.
Very cool. In reading the backstories on these sections, again, like to point out with Bishop Partridge, he travels down to Missouri, right? And there he's preparing to go back to his hometown. However, him and another guy, he ends up writing his wife a letter saying, hey, it's actually necessary that I stay here. So as getting the lands and everything, and his wife is Lydia, and is that who Lydia was named after?
Yes.
Okay. but
Now it is.
Retroactively.
That's right.
Yeah.
But anyway, so he writes his wife and says, actually, we're going to end up living here. And his wife says that Lydia willingly obeyed the revelation to move, packing her home and gathering her 5 daughters to travel west to a place she had never seen before. And it just goes back to the significance and the importance of spouses, you know, and what a team that they can be, right? When you have 2 different individuals. I mean, she could easily say, I mean, listen, this is way too much. But she didn't do that. You know, she willingly packed her stuff up and moved the family without Bishop Partridge. Did it on her own.
I bet he wasn't sick on Mother's Day ever.
Yeah. What a day, Jackson.
What a day.
Yeah, what a day.
That's
Way to
right.
make it about you.
Yeah. But, you know, for every one story we hear in the church about, you know, some miraculous thing or this just great faith that someone showed and did these awesome things, there's 10 more
Right.
that we've never heard.
That aren't recorded. That's right.
And a lot of times it's usually a spouse, a wife that just took their kids and had to watch the husband died, or 3 kids died, or a kid died during childbirth, or whatever it was. I mean, there's always stories out there. And I think one day we'll be able to hear all these stories, you know.
I wonder if we're going to be able to watch it like a highlight reel.
Oh, that'd be
one day
super awesome. I you know, I mean, and it's going to be in HD.
So, yeah,
You know what I'm
right,
saying?
exactly.
And they're all
4K.
coming out. One thing
There's
the
a
church-
lot that is coming out,
and they're very careful. Elder Stephen E. Snow said, he was asked, why don't we just put all the journals out there? He said, well, we have to actually go through them. There's a lot of covenants being made, a lot of personal stories
Yeah,
that, you know, a lot of just really, you know, going to the temple, things that are really sacred that doesn't need to be out there.
Yeah.
So it just needs to go.
things that will be beneficial to the saints today. That's what they're trying to put out.
I think about my journal and the stuff I'm writing in there. I hate that I hesitate sometimes. I'm like, 100 years from now, are they going to be like, this lady hated everyone, right?
She hated 2 guys sitting beside her saying,
Right.
so.
Good night. But I think that's a really important aspect is their humanity and their dignity needs to be maintained because they're not here to defend themselves. Can I throw in a quote I read yesterday? It went along with what we were just talking about, but I feel like I've lost what we were talking about.
No, go ahead.
Anyway, Jeremy Guthrie, former major league pitcher, he helped bring the 2015 Kansas City Royals to the World Series and won. He pitched in the 7th inning.
Remember the church, right?
Remember the church, current mission president in Texas.
Yep.
And I follow him on Instagram just because he's younger than me and I was very inspired. His wife just had a baby while they're mission presidents and together. And I thought it was just so neat, but he has this great quote. They ask him about, you know, he's like, do you still possess a live arm? He's like, nope, my arm is as close as dead as it could be. But he also goes and says he agrees that every elder and sister in his stewardship left behind opportunities and loved ones to serve the Lord. They're making precious sacrifices. I don't think you can have stewardship without sacrifices. I love how he could be doing anything right now. He's got the cash because, you know, he was paid well. He was in the MLB for like 15 years. So doing all right. And here he is serving the Lord, and it's very inspiring. And then also Elder Athos Amorim, he quoted in his talk from October 1998, Obeying the Law. He talks about being a Brazilian military guy, and they don't ever consider it work. They consider it service. And I think that's a game changer for when, like Lydia Partridge, is this work or is this service? Of course, she's going to pack up her stuff and roll. She had the right perspective. If we continue to belabor things as this is so hard, this is so terrible, we'll talk ourselves out of it.
I like that.
I was just going to say eternal perspective is a very key thing. If we can grasp that and hone that in more, I think it would just be so much easier to live here. I mean, in this mortal life now, because if everything's just right in front of your face and you don't step back sometimes and just see the bigger picture and see what's going on and what will go on, it makes it super hard if you don't do that. You've got to get a bigger picture, eternal perspective. Where are we? Why am I really here? What's really happening? What's really going to happen? Those things are important to remember. So
Well, I think also it doesn't have to be huge things that, like, what are things that we see in the church that you don't want to do on a regular basis? And one of my pet peeves, and I'll say it because I have a microphone, when people, like, I think I have all the respect in the world for people who don't want to speak in church. I love speaking in church, but I understand people don't. I think one of the things that makes us an unjust steward, we get up there and talk about how horrible it is or how we hid from the bishopric. We like to beat that dead horse, and like, you're setting your talk up to, you're digging yourself a hole to get the Spirit invited when you talk about, and I don't mean people saying, I struggle with this. This makes me so scared.
Right.
That's different. But people that
don't apologize for giving a talk.
Right.
I mean, I've never,
because I think that makes people feel like, well, if they're terrible, what's going to happen when I'm terrible? Like, we're just setting ourselves up for like a pattern, a template.
Not a good template.
Yeah. Pattern after General Conference talks.
Oh man, I know.
They just start.
Yes.
Just start.
They don't
Start
giving
and
it.
start.
But
because we've all heard the hiding from the bishopric joke now, and it's dead. I officially declare it dead. Done. I don't want to hear it. I support you in your struggle, though.
Yeah.
Section 53.
53.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sidney Gilbert. We're
Sidney
introduced
Gilbert.
to Sidney Gilbert. He's got some prayers that need to be answered. He's a convert to the church. Unsung hero. We don't hear much about him, but he does later establish a store in Independence to facilitate things happening, to gather in visual, kind of a place to hang out, not hang out, but to get goods and all.
We hang out too, go there and check it out.
What's up?
Why do you think he didn't want to go by Algernon?
Yeah, I saw
Any
that.
thoughts on that?
Yeah. He's all, he might like Sidney Rigdon, so I want to be like Sidney.
Algernon.
But we could pattern some thoughts, real short section, but he was asked to forsake the world, take on callings, be an agent as we are called by the bishop, take our journey to Christ, and endure to the end. 5 points there. That's just, if we can pattern.
That's a template for life, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's actually something I picked up on too, because it talks about templates or talks about patterns, and then you go to 53 and it's like, here's this pattern.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought that was pretty cool too. I like the fact in verse 1, it says, Brother Gilbert basically called upon the Lord. He wanted to know, what is my calling and election in the church? What do I need to do? What am I supposed to do? And it made me think, like, do we do that? Do we get on our knees and say, Lord, what do I need to do today? What do you need me to do today? Make it aware to me and give me the desire and the courage to do those things. I think sometimes, and I'm speaking for myself, sometimes we're afraid to do that because we know the Lord's going to do it. He's going to say, yeah, here's what I need you to do today. And it's like, I just kind of got something else going on right now. I really got to get this done first. So, I like the fact that he's asking the Lord, like, hey, what can I do? What's my job? What do I need to do right now? And you see that a lot with some of these elders or some of these men and even women coming in to the church as it's starting. They're trying to find out, hey, what can I do to participate? What do I need to be doing? And so I thought, that's a great, as we're talking about a pattern, we should do that as well. We should be asking the Lord, what do we need to do today? Definitely need to be asking, what can I learn from the things that happens in our lives? Because there's a lot of things. What am I supposed to learn from this?
So what if they obviously had the prophet Joseph Smith there to go to. We don't have the prophet that we can just go to, right? But can we go to?
I've got Russell right here. Hold on just a second. No, just get out.
But I mean, has anyone ever gone to their bishop and say, hey, bishop, who can I go visit? Who needs some ministry?
That's true.
What can I do? How can I serve? How can I help you?
Oh, a bishop would he?
Oh
faint?
yeah, he'd eat you out.
Wait, what?
Well, now it's going to your elders quorum president, or Society president.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
Let's
new
calm
pattern.
down on the bishop. He's got to worry about young men.
New
and stuff like
pattern.
that.
Jackson's like, I didn't get that.
Yeah, Jackson.
But also, if you're in a
We leave it in
leadership
90s.
position, don't you want to say, how's your ministering assignment? Come to me after you've done your
Yes.
ministering assignment. Because that's it where I get kind of snotty. A little snotty is, do we even need to ask sometimes? Because there's already stuff we
When they
you don't need
polish
to
up
be
what we're
commanding
doing
all
now.
things. I mean,
That's right.
definitely reach out and say, is there somebody who needs something extra? But
That's true.
if you haven't done your ministering, you don't have time for something
It's good.
extra.
Good
Right.
place to start. Sure.
As I haven't done my ministering. So.
So section 54 is where Leman Copley broke his.
Hold on, I want to say one more thing.
Okay.
It says talking about where he tells Brother Gilbert to forsake the world, verse 2. M. Russell Ballard said, in spite of all the wickedness in the world and in spite of all the opposition to good that we find on every hand, we should not try to take ourselves or our children out of the world. In other words, that's not what the Lord was saying there. Like, hey, you get out of the world. We've heard the little, I think it's called a couplet. Is that what it's called? Where it's two verses put together, I think. And President Nelson taught me that. Believe me, I didn't come up with that word. I'm on a couplet or something like that, where be in the world, but not of the world. Anyway, he says, basically he says, we should not try to take ourselves or our children out of the world. Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is likened to leaven. Wait, how do you say it? Leaven or yeast? Anyway, yeast. We are to lift the world and help all to rise above the wickedness that surrounds us. So that's found in Matthew 13:33. We're to be like the yeast of this world, and to help those around us lift people up. So we are to be in this world. Obviously, don't be of it, which is what the Lord is saying here. You shall forsake the world. In other words, just don't conform to worldly ways, but be here to uplift others. So I thought it was just interesting to make that distinction there when he says, you shall forsake the world. It's like, just write them off. That's what it's saying. It can be read that way a little bit. So.
I got a great quote that goes along with that. Elder James E. Talmage, I read an article about the unjust parable, or the unjust steward, since we're talking so much about stewardship. And that's a tricky one, because if you read it, it seems like the unjust steward didn't actually help his the rich man as he should have. But what he points out is worldly minded men do not neglect provision for the future years, while the children of light are those who believe spiritual wealth are to be above earthly possessions, or are less energetic, prudent, or wise, emulate the unjust steward and the lovers of mammon, not in their dishonesty, cupidity, miserly hoarding of the wealth that is at best transitory, but in their zeal, forethought, and provision for the future. And I think that's forsake the world, but you want, like, there's so many church talks where you hear people say, we brought them to Welfare Square. We brought a group of rabbis. We brought these people to Welfare Square so that we can have connections, so that we have the good from them. So forsake the negative, but we don't forsake the people who we need to cultivate a relationship with.
Yeah. I think just recently with Ethiopia, I think the leader of Ethiopia came to Welfare Square or whatever in Salt Lake.
And the church has worked extensively with the NAACP, which seemed very topical with the time that we live in right now. So we don't have to agree with everything,
right? But we can definitely be
relationships
Christ-like.
are always important.
Yeah, we can unify in the Christian world. Christianity's kind of going down. So we need to build up Christianity and kind of unify as many brethren and sisters in Christ. Yeah. So what you say about old W.W. Phelps?
He's the Paul McCartney of his day. He wrote so many songs. He had so many, didn't he? It was like poems and songs. He was just a great writer.
Yeah. He was a printer in New York and found out about the Book of Mormon and was sticking up for it before he even joined the church. And then he went to go find Joseph, joined the church, and section 55 is.
And he's going to write books for little children.
I loved that.
He's the first Dr. Seuss.
Right. Children are clearly intrinsic to the gospel. Let's get them some stuff on their level.
Right.
Because you meet people that, we only teach the scriptures to our children. We don't use any of those fun books. I'm like, I use a lot of fun books. I appreciate the fun books because the scriptures are tough.
Yeah, for sure. He's asked to go to Missouri, and he sets up the first printing shop that we'll learn years from now that will be destroyed. And few people actually saved some of the records, and we have some of them now in Dr. Covenants. But
I was just going to make a quick shout out, Line Upon Line, for Come Follow Me. It's a great, no one can see that. It's just going to be a screen. But anyway, that is a great, it has the best for the Come Follow Me lessons. It's all animated, super good. It's from the Living Scriptures, actually. It's animators from Living Scriptures, but it's really good and explains really well. My kids, I have an 18-year-old daughter and a 13-year-old daughter, but they love them too. And and it helps me even understand the way that they put it in there. I love it. It's like one of my favorite channels as far as Come Follow Me, other than Saints in the South, but you know what I mean? But it, just speaking of like the children's books and putting it on a child level and things like that, because I need that sometimes too, but it's great channel, Line Upon Line. Check it out.
And I love how the Lord is just using the different talents of his people.
Oh yeah.
And putting everybody to work and
he knows, of course he knows best where to put the talents of the people, but he needs the people to realize their talents too,
Right.
to accept those callings. Because if W.W. Phelps never put his talents to use, he may, if the Lord's like, I know what your talents are and I need you to do this, he may sit there and go, I can't do that. I don't know
Well, if
anything.
he had buried his talent.
Exactly.
Another parable.
Buried it. That's
Stewardship,
true.
right,
That's true.
Right? All comes together.
And there it is.
Section 56.
56.
What y'all got? What's up?
Chastises Ezra Thayre. Just always feel bad for the people who have that. This is in here forever. You messed up.
Yeah.
So what did he do?
Heck if I know.
He just
Not obeying former or previous revelation.
And the thing is, he was called to go to Missouri with Thomas B. Marsh. And I mean, isn't that the other guy that had the problem with the pride problem? So
Got to be thankful for these guys willing to sacrifice
yeah,
their reputation so the rest of us can learn.
exactly. And did Thayer come back to church? Did he get rebaptized?
I don't think he ever left. We don't know much.
Okay,
That's the
I know he. Well, did he? I thought it said that he did.
he was selfish.
Like he didn't
and
go-
didn't commit all the way, and didn't
I
go
thought
on
he-
a companion. He didn't go. He was supposed to be Thomas
Like
Marsh's
later-
companion.
Yeah. Later in
did-
life, though, I thought he did not go follow Brigham Young, and he was one of the ones that stayed, and et cetera, et cetera. I don't know.
So
I may be off.
But that's a little different than being.
No. Yeah. I was
mean,
just saying
there's-
overall history, just kind
Yeah.
of who he was and
Yeah,
what
we
he'd
don't know
done.
much. That's one thing as I was
Right.
studying, we don't know much of the ending of
Right.
him, but we do know that he was supposed to go and made some selfish decisions, and
right.
Thomas Marsh needed a companion, and he just, for
which
whatever
is
reason.
which is hard to overcome.
Right.
Sometimes everybody has some selfish desires and selfish traits, and overcoming those is
It's tough.
It can be a challenge
Yeah.
sometimes.
He did go serve a mission later.
Who, Ezra?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
he
he
did.
never
He-
left the church. It
No, I don't
just-
think so. Yeah,
he just went
not sure.
inactive or something. I don't know.
No, he just. I think it was just that moment. It was
Yeah.
something to do with the
Missouri going to Missouri.
Yeah, it was something to do with that. He had a struggle with that, and was kind of his schedule. We talk about our schedules. It got into his schedule. It messed something up, and so he didn't feel like he was he wasn't ready to leave because of the situation. Thomas B. Marsh was ready to go.
Yeah, and that's where he asks
So
Joseph.
the Lord sort of had to step in and say, okay, I don't want to say that the Lord, obviously the Lord was disappointed, but I don't think it was that the Lord just, like you're out of my face, it wasn't that as much.
So
but
Thomas B. Marsh needed a companion. So
Yeah.
he goes to ask Joseph, what do I do?
Yeah.
And this is where section 56
Okay.
Yeah.
comes in.
that's what it was.
And Brother Miller, a guy who I follow on YouTube, he calls it the naughty section because there's a lot of knots. Not take up the cross,
Naughty.
not
Bad
be safe,
jokes.
not obey,
Bad joke.
not give your substance to the poor. Bellies are not satisfied. Spirits are not contrite. There's a lot of knots in this section. So he says, don't be naughty. Hey, whatever it takes to
Hey,
remember.
I'm telling you, whatever. But so he tells Ezra there to repent, and I think, and of course he does, because he goes on a mission later. I don't think it was very much later. It was not too far along, but anyway, I like there was just a cool little thing here, giving to the poor. If we're fortunate, I wrote this little thing. It says, if we are fortunate to gain many riches of this world, it is for helping others. I mean, honestly, it's we're talking about being stewards, and if the Lord allows us to be wealthy, which is not a bad thing. We don't talk about being wealthy as a bad thing. That's not a bad thing. Well, it depends on how you get it, I guess. I mean, how are you trying to get your gain? But I mean, you can be successful, wealthy, but in the end, in reality, it's really to be able to be in a position to help others in a better way. You think about, I can't remember his name, and I know that's terrible. The ball player, what was his name?
Jeremy Guthrie.
Jeremy Guthrie made a lot of money, done very well. I'm not saying he's out there giving money to people or anything like that, but what I'm getting to is he's serving the church. I mean, he's like, I've been blessed.
Mhm.
I have an opportunity to be able to give my time, at a young age, because I've made my living, through my talents that the Lord's given me. So that's why we're given those things. So, Brother Romney, Marion G. Romney, he said, be liberal in your giving that yourselves may grow. Don't give just for the benefit of the poor, but give for your own welfare. Give enough so that you can give yourself into the kingdom of God through consecrating of your means and your time. I love that. Give enough so that you can give yourself into the kingdom of God. That's pretty cool.
So 16 and 17 were the verses that I liked in this one, because he calls out the rich and he calls out the poor.
Yeah.
Right. So 16, woe unto you rich men that will not give your substance to the poor, for your riches will canker your souls, and this shall be your lamentation in the day of visitation. And he goes on. So he's not getting on to him for being rich, but it's not for being, again, wise stewards and using it for good and everything. And then he said, the very next verse, woe unto you poor men, whose hearts are not broken, whose spirits are not contrite, and whose bellies are not satisfied, and whose hands are not stayed from laying hold upon other men's goods, whose eyes are full of greediness, and who will not labor with your own hands.
Yes.
So don't just be takers
Exactly.
either as well and stuff. So I like that he calls out everybody,
Right.
Whether you're rich or you're poor, it's all about who you are inside, the
That's
character of the man and the woman.
What you got, Andrew? 57.
57. So this is where we find out where Zion's at, Independence,
finally get to
Missouri.
find out.
I need some music going right now.
I've
Independence.
got some songs. Oh, I know some songs we could do.
The place
I don't
which is
know.
now called Independence.
What songs you got? How do you?
There's a song we used to do from the Missouri Independence pageant. I'll have to look it up, and I can still sing it in my head, and I won't do it now.
Do
Is
it.
it Independence Day? Martina McBride.
That's it. That was it.
That
was
was
the song. No.
I was like, what?
Independence Day.
I'll find it. It's something. It's an old song. It's like an actually historically accurate to the
Cool.
time period song, and I'll Google
cool.
it. And we used to play it for pageant, and I don't know. I love Missouri so much. We can talk all day about Missouri. It's the greatest place on earth.
So I visited what was it, not last year, 2019, and man, it was just very beautiful. I mean, very beautiful, a lot of country land.
And
I
it's
was-
very rolling hills.
yeah.
People say it's super flat, and like it's. I mean,
let's
think Waycross is flatter.
I mean, we're forgetting, guys. This is where the Garden of Eden
it's
was.
beautiful. It's beautiful.
I mean,
The
it
temple
is
lot
through-
there, and Adamonde Almond.
Yep.
Wow.
But you won't appreciate that as a 5-year-old. It's a big field.
Yeah,
As
I
you
mean,
get older, it's really cool.
You're right. You're right.
Yeah.
So they identify this place as Zion, and the Lord commands Oliver Cowdery, W.W. Phelps, Sidney Gilbert, and Bishop Partridge to go be planted. They used the word planted in this section, to go plant yourselves in Independence. Let's get it established. Use your talents. And come to find out, I think it was just a few months, August of that year, Sidney Rigdon dedicated the land of Zion. And then Joe Smith dedicated the temple site the following day, August 3rd, 1831. So
That's cool.
so they actually was ready to go forward with this place.
and this brings up a good point about how the plan, God's plan is going to go forth no matter what, right? But it has a lot to do with how ready we are. We always talk about, when's the second coming? When is it going to be? When do you think it's going to be? Well, it's probably going to be when we're most ready in general as humanity, because the Lord is merciful and he loves us and he wants as many of us as he can get. So he's doing everything he can to get us to the point to where we're going to be in good shape for the millennium to happen. So when I look at this and I think of Missouri, that's where it was supposed to be. That's where the temple, where all nations should flow into it, was going to be before Salt Lake, because the reason Salt Lake had to happen is because of the evilness, the evil ways of the people around, the mobs, the things that ran them out of Missouri, except there's a lot of things went on. They had to leave. They had to flee. Change of plans, right? Who's to say that the millennium couldn't have already happened? But this is all me just speaking freely here. This is liberal talk here. I'm not trying to act like this is
freestyle.
Yeah, this is not. Yeah,
like gospel style.
this is not.
This is why we podcast.
Yeah, but think about it. If they were allowed to live in Missouri and to flourish, Salt Lake City may have never came into play, probably wouldn't have, because they wouldn't had any need. You know, I'm not saying everybody would have just stayed there. We probably still could have flowed out and went all over the world. Obviously, it's got to be, because we got to get it to all nations. But could the millennium have possibly already happened by now? I don't know. It could have been a whole different ball game. I'm just speaking, you know, freely. You know, and so, I mean, I'm just saying. And so you see that the Lord has a plan, and it's going to be right, and it's going to be good, but we're part of that plan, and he wants as many of us as he can get in the place where we need to be. And so I think that's why, you know, that things, who knows, who knows? I'm just talking, yeah, who knows, whatever.
What do you like after midnight with a bunch of Kool-Aid?
So anyway, there's this thing, no, but yeah, it's, you know, so I'm just saying, I mean, who knows what could have happened, you know. This was the plan that at the time that was supposed to work, and it would have if there was enough righteousness, but there wasn't, as far as what I'm saying in the world to allow it to happen.
So the Lord sent these individuals, W. Phelps, to set up a printing store, so Lord's revelations could be printed. Sends Bishop Partridge to get some land. He buys 63 acres, accumulates 2,000 more acres for inheritance for the saints.
Everything's
got
rolling.
old Sidney Gilbert, who the store still exists today, the Gilbert store, and to facilitate and get goods for the gathering of Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got Oliver Cowdery, you know, second elder of the church, that
and when he says plant, he's planting these guys, because this is it. This is where this is going to happen. It's all going to go down right here. And I need you to plant. And when I say plant, this is here. And we need to flourish right here. We're fixing to the crop is going right here. But obviously Satan,
plan's messed up. So
Satan comes in and allows people to, you know,
they're kicked out of Missouri, and we'll learn that as time goes on. But
so, yeah.
The other thing is, the Lord could have simply been kind of a go ahead and getting establishment there, buying some land and everything, to go ahead and let's say he didn't ever purchase any land, you know, and then more and more people settle there. Well, it's harder to purchase land and get land and everything. So, you know, obviously the Lord knows what's going to happen, what's going to go down and everything and so forth. So just kind of getting there, getting established, purchasing some land, you know, for later on, you know, knowing that it may not,
it's still going to, like I say, the Lord's plan is going to happen. It may get delayed because of wickedness, you know, and that's on us. It's not anything to do with him, but it's going to happen. It's still going to happen in Missouri. Everything's going to work out. It's just, it got delayed. It had to be delayed. And, you know, I'm just saying,
the
if
delay could have been the plan. Like that.
And it could be
everything. Like when we learn about the Kirtland banking crisis
more
and all that,
yeah.
I mean, that's part of the plan. And
that's
he's
true.
Laying out in these ones being a wise steward, because he knows the Kirtland banking crisis is happening. True. Everything that happens, there's no coincidences in the gospel of Jesus Christ. And whether we choose one thing or the other, the plan rolls forward. But everything that does happen, there's something to take from it.
Exactly.
Yeah,
everything's going to work out as it should. I mean, everything will be right.
Just don't be on the dumb side of things.
Exactly.
Be on the smart side of things.
Exactly.
And that's easy for me to joke about, because I felt like I've been on the dumb side of things a lot. Like I hear something from the pulpit and I'm like, wow, how about that? Or, you know, but my natural man takes over. That's my
very easy to do. It is.
And then I step back and be like, who's on the Lord's side? Who's great song for a reason.
Yeah.
You know, just 2 years after this, Bishop Partridge, who's getting things rolling, it's Tarred and Feather right there in town, in the court, in Central, right there in Independence, right in front of everybody. And
Satan really
print shop's destroyed. But with the print shop destroyed, we do learn that some girls actually gathered these revelations. So I mean, the Lord's work will move forward. It's just up to us if we want to be part of it.
Do we want to see the miracles, or do we want to see the cynicism of hard things happening?
I love how the Book of Mormon is to bring Jews and Gentiles together to know that Jesus is the Christ. And the land that he bought was the line directly running between Jew and Gentile. In other words, the Native Americans, because Missouri was the frontier, you know, I mean, it was
Don't Missouri explain me.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? And so you got the Indians on one side and you got the, you know, everybody else on the other, Gentiles and the Jews. And it was actually almost as if the church was in between those two things. And it kind of joins them together, and it's just it was a cool little thing there. I noticed it was kind of neat. Yeah, that was verse 4, by the way, in 57.
In 57.
Mm-hmm.
I was just going to mention, and I know we'll have some more time to talk about Bishop Partridge and stuff, but this jumped out to me, just kind of, again, going back to the kind of man that he was. But his daughter wrote in her journal, says, of the difficulties of dealing with imperfect saints, Partridge's daughter, Emily Dow Partridge, later remembered, when I look back and remember the great responsibility that rested upon my father as first bishop, his poverty and privations, and the hardships that he had to endure, the accusations of false brethren, the fault finding of the poor, and the persecutions of our enemies, I do not wonder at his early death. Partridge's own patriarchal blessing warned him, thou shalt stand in thine office until thou art weary of it, and shalt desire to resign it, that thou mayest rest for a little season.
Good grief.
So we ran that man into the ground.
Wow. I mean, literally, that man was drove to his death. I mean, what a great man.
Yeah.
Good grief. I can't get over it.
Hat maker.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a great hat maker.
And his family was used to a better lifestyle because
For
sure.
he was successful.
Yeah.
And so that had to be hard on them to,
Wow.
how
What a great
many
man.
people were that worried about fancy hats as they're being ran from their house,
Exactly.
right?
And
I bet he had some cool hats.
yeah.
Everyone should wear hats.
Yeah,
They
man.
look good.
I mean, come on.
Cover up some ugly stuff.
I mean,
Well, there you go. Episode 71 in the books. Until next time, y'all keep on striving.
Held it in this time.
Okay.
Held it in
waiting.
this
I was like,
time. I
did it
really
every
appreciate you
time.
keeping that in.
Yeah, absolutely. I
I did
like
it every
I like
time
y'all to
and
do
then-
something at the end. That way I can throw something in there.
didn't that time.
I know.